Ray Dalio is in my opinion, a con artist and a moron. He's a pea brain. And this guy, listen, I know the hedge fund business, and I mentioned this before. Um, there's two guys that have been in the media a whole lot recently, past few years, who I never heard of. Okay, you know who they are? Jeffrey Epstein and Ray Dalio. Okay, I never heard of these guys before. And when Jeffrey Epstein, I said, hedge fund? He doesn't run no hedge fund. This because I knew that was a joke. Ray Dalio is trying to do something. He's trying to like run for office or something. He's got this big PR campaign. He's trying to reach out and become like a populist and all this crap. Ray Dalio doesn't even run a hedge fund. That's not even a hedge fund. That's a mutual fund. Okay, you can. I mentioned this before. Anybody can call any fund that they have a hedge fund if it's legally structured as a hedge fund. Hedge fund can mean anything, by the way. You all know that? It can mean anything. It's a legal structure, okay? But effectively what happens when hedge funds are really large, they're mutual funds. Take a look at Ray Dalio's top holdings. Consistently, he has the S&P 500 there. Take a look. If you don't believe me, go look at the old data, okay? I'm telling you, I know this. So what he's doing is basically collecting management fees, okay? And his performance ain't so good. I can tell you that. Um, when I talk about Warren Buffett being the most overrated investor, probably in U.S. history, which is true in my opinion, my God, you compare Warren Buffett to Ray Dalio, then yeah, Warren Buffett is certainly, you're talking completely different spheres as far as I'm concerned. Warren Buffett's legitimate. I don't think Ray Dalio's. To be honest with you, this is just there's no factual basis behind this. But when I look at Ray Dalio, I kind of see like I don't want to say it because I don't want to make it sound like that's the case, but I kind of get this feeling like he's kind of like a Bernie Madoff type of guy. He seems like really shady and not that knowledgeable. But of course, look, all these hedge fund guys, they try and come out as they're really intelligent and they talk all these, mention all these words, and because it's all a marketing game, they're trying to raise money, you see. But Ray Dalio just seems like, there's no other major hedge fund manager that I know of that I've had this thought. It just seems like he's kind of I don't know. It seems like he's kind of a dildo. Doesn't really, The media makes you think all these guys are superstars. Once you uncover the veil, get behind the curtain and see the reality, you're going to realize they're not any different. The media wants you to think that all these guys are great because every time they have a story, an interview, it's it's clicks, right? Ad clicks, ad revenue. Okay? Just take a look at Warren Buffett's performance over the past 16, 17 years. He hasn't even beat the S&P 500. Think about that. And the S&P 500 is not even a credible benchmark for Berkshire Hathaway. Berkshire Hathaway is a hedge fund or a private equity fund. Really, it's not structured that way, probably. But should the benchmark be the S&P 500? When he's able to purchase private companies, he's able to use leverage, he's able to get all these private deals. You understand? So, not to mention the fact that he's a value investor, right? Berkshire Hathaway's considered a value, at least a value fund, maybe a growth and income fund, right? Right? It's more value oriented. I'm not going to talk about his style drift. Well, you can talk about that here in a second, how he's all into tech now. And this is a man who's always talked about how he never understood technology. I mean, that's a whole nother. But my point is that when you have a value fund, Berkshire Hathaway and Warren Buffett, we're talking about value investing, correct? Everybody correct? Same page, right? Everybody on the same page, right? Agree? Yes, no? I'll get to Kramer in a second. Listen, I exposed Kramer a long time ago. I mean, this guy's a disaster. He's a liar and a scam artist. Jim Kramer is, by the way. Um, if you're a value investor and you have a value fund, you need to pay dividends, don't you? Of course you do. Take a look at Buffett's top holdings. and take a look at the dividends he's getting. Why isn't he paying dividends in his fund? So the lackey, the Warren Buffett lackey, is going to say, "Oh well, we want Warren Buffett to reinvest those dividends for us. That's going to give us a larger compounded return, right?" That's what they're going to say. But I say to that person this: I say, "Well, why don't you give investors the choice of whether to reinvest the dividends they should be receiving from Berkshire Hathaway, right, or to receive the dividends, right?" See, that's also, by the way, when you look at the S&P performance versus Berkshire Hathaway, even if you want to use the S&P as a benchmark, which is not an accurate benchmark for Berkshire Hathaway, because Berkshire takes more risk and has more, uses more leverage. But if you do want to use the benchmark, understand that you need to make sure and take a look at what the S&P returns were over the period that you're examining, with the dividends reinvested in the S&P. Okay? People don't do that usually, do they? S&P is yielding probably 2% for several years, right? That's got to be reinvested into that index, right? You understand what I'm saying? I'm telling you, folks, there's so many scams in the financial industry that people don't even know about, and it's right under their nose. But people just they're not aware, they're not observant, they don't question. You see? They're too accepting of things. But I don't care what you do in your life, you better be, you better, think about things and question things. So I've never heard of factor investing. Jim Cramer, let me just tell you this, and I've mentioned this before. Just about everybody from the financial industry who's in the financial media is either a loser, they failed, or they're a scammer. You can write that down. Write it down. You see, folks, I don't say things without having the facts. I don't do that. Remember, my background is very analytical, science-based background, right? When you go through a program of study centered around the scientific method, which is critical thinking, right? You don't just come out and toss things out of your mouth. You don't do that. I have a basis for my conclusion on that. What's my basis? Well, I've previously exposed many of these people on CNBC. Jim Cramer, for instance, makes false claims about how he had such and such return on his hedge fund, which is, he's never shown proof of that. And if you're making so much money doing well in a hedge fund, why are you in the media, right? Jim Cramer realized he could make more money manipulating stocks in the media, and I'm not going to get into that. I can tell you what you might want to read about that, though. That's pretty informative. Is what's the former Overstock.com CEO? What's his name? Patrick Byrne. Go on Patrick Byrne's website. Type in deep capture, 2 words. Type in Jim Cramer, and he has this big long article he wrote several years ago talking about this whole mafia on Wall Street and the manipulation and all the scams. It's really interesting to see how deep he dove to look at all the connections with Jim Cramer and some of these other guys. But you look at Josh Brown. I mentioned this before. Josh Brown, the reformed broker. That means that, doesn't that mean like you were doing something wrong before? Like, tell us what you were doing wrong. And this is why I exposed, by the way, because if you look at what's going on in the financial media and in Wall Street, you have a particular cabal of people who are involved. And if you're not in that cabal, you're not invited. You're not welcome. And that's the big problem on Wall Street in the financial media. Okay. I exposed all this crap on my site a long time ago.
So while we're on the topic of crypto, if you're looking for a place to buy, sell, track, or trade both crypto and NFTs all in one place with fees that are up to 85% lower than the top competitors, then FTX US is there to help. They're trusted by millions of users, and what I like the most about them is that they allow you to set up an automatic recurring buy so that you can dollar cost average into the markets on a regular basis. So if you're interested, the link is down below in the description with the code GRAHAM, and you could get all the way up to $100 for signing up depending on how much you trade.